All right, so we are going to do a little bit more on describing functions. We're given a function up here. The first thing we should do is get the graph. So we'll go into our y equals and put this function in. So 1 divided by parentheses x squared minus 4 close parentheses. And if we go over to our graph, we're going to see that this has some asymptotes at -2 and 2. So I'm going to put those in red. So on my graph, at -2, I'm going to put in this asymptote. And at 2, I'll put in this asymptote. And we can just get a general idea of what these graphs look like. So we're just going to kind of sketch this. Oh, I didn't mean to do that in red. Let me switch to pencil. Make it black.
Yo, I'm trying to get this.
And then we have this little U shape like this. Little arrows.
The asymptotes are at -2 and 2.
-2 and 2. And this part over here, like this. Yes, the asymptotes are at -2 and 2. And that's because if I put -2 or +2 in here, you'd have 4 minus 4. Can't have 0 in the denominator. So that's why those little points ended up being skipped over. So the worksheet that goes along with this is going to have things in kind of a paragraph form. So we're going to go through this one more example just so we can kind of understand. So this is a blank function because it has a variable in the denominator. So if we think back to what we did before, anytime I have this fraction, we called it a rational function. Rational in math means having a ratio. Ratio is a fraction. That's where the name comes from. The domain is, now our domain is going to have 3 pieces because it's broken up by those asymptotes. So the first one would be -∞ to -2. And that's united with -2 to 2. Pencil's doing something weird. And then we have 2 to infinity. So we're just looking left to right. On the left end, it goes off forever at -∞. Kind of jumps over 2. Goes from -2 to 2. Kind of jumps over 2. Goes up here off to infinity. All right. There is also an asymptote here. This will never be 0 no matter what number you put in for x. And that's because you have a 1 in the top. There's no way to get 0 in the top of that fraction. And so basically everything from below 0 and everything above 0 is in the range, just not 0. So the range would be -∞ to 0, and then 0, I forgot to put my negative, and 0 to infinity. So there's just that break there. All right, so what kind of symmetry does it have? Y-axis symmetry, good.
No, I knew what it was. It's just that I think I wanted me to speak.
I do. I'm putting it on there. Okay, y-axis symmetry. Because it is an even function, which means that f of x equals f of -x. So what that means is basically whatever the negative x is and the positive x, they're going to have the same y values. Okay, the graph has a blank maximum value at blank. So there's a little point right here that we could call a maximum. It would be a relative maximum, and it's not 0. So let's explore that on our calculators and try to figure out what that is. So if we hit trace, it usually starts right on the y-axis, so it's 0, -0.25, so -4th. So -0.25 or -1/4, either way. It does look like 0, 0 on here, which is why they have that trace feature, so you can kind of look. You can also go over to your table, and it'll tell you 0 is -0.25, and they have those errors in there for the asymptotes. There is no blank minimum because the graph goes down forever. So that would be no absolute minimum. And there is no absolute maximum because the graph goes up forever. So that's the arrows on the top and the bottom. There's no actual stopping point. There is a blank asymptote at y equals, I don't think that's supposed to be 3. I think that's supposed to be 0. And that would be horizontal. And there are, this is supposed to be vertical. I started to write 2. There are vertical asymptotes at x equals -2 and x equals 2. And then the function is increasing over the intervals and decreasing. So increasing, this part would be increasing right here. So that's -infinity to -2. It's also increasing from -2 to 0 for this piece right here. So both this piece and this piece are increasing. And then this is decrease and that's decrease. So 0 to 2 and 2 to infinity, it is decreasing. So that's just a good review.